Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is, well, you probably heard. My name is Kevin McDonald. And Rochelle, my darling young better half, is traveling today. So she's unavailable to the show, which means I get to have Emma Jean all to myself. This is cool.
All right.
Emma Jean Rowin is our guest today. She's an author, and she's got an incredible story that she has actually taken the time to she's written it down. She has, and there she is. And the name of the book is When Things Collapse, and it's a story that is really it really is more of a journey, isn't it, Emma Jean?
Absolutely. It's an interesting journey. It's a really unique journey. And it's one that took me a long time to get through, but I'm happy to say I'm on the other side of it and I'm happier for it.
You know, I hear that a lot because it's true a lot. A lot of times we all go through stuff, and sometimes we go through stuff for years. And then at one point in time, you either wake up or figure out that you can get past it, and then you do. And then things are then turned into a great magical experience sometimes. Has that been your experience?
Yes, I think that is the gift. It can be the gift of going through something difficult is I have perspective from having gone through years and years of a traumatic situation that I wasn't really sure if I would ever see the end of. I have perspective, the gift of perspective on just gratitude, how grateful I should be for having peace in my life, for having health, for having choices and autonomy and the ability to wake up every day and make my life what I want it to be, because there was a time when I didn't have that.
And it's an important time for you and your family, your children as well, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. My kids are, all my kids are off in college now, or well, one is going in August, and then I'll be an empty nester. And I'm able to see all of my kids thrive past this situation and get some time to reflect on it for myself, which is where my book came from, but also some time alone with my wonderful husband.
Which is awesome. And I take it you still like each other, huh?
We really do. We really like each other. And we have never spent any time alone. We were a blended family. So when we married, he had 3 kids and I had 2. So we immediately had children between the ages of 5 and 10. And then we had 5 teenagers in our house together. So we've never spent any time just fly by the seat of your pants on a Saturday and doing what we craft on our own. We don't even know what that'll be like, but we're really excited for it.
So you had 5 teenagers in the house all at one time. How many gallons of milk did you go through in a week?
Oh, a lot. And you wouldn't believe the laundry detergent and the washing machines. Think how many loads of laundry, especially with the kids being in sports and activities. Our washer was always running and our dryer was always broken because it was overused. And we were saying, oh, we can make it another month, and have to push the button every 20 minutes. And it's not drying the towels. And it's a lot. Everything is a lot when you have a big family, but the joy is a lot too.
So did you now my family we had 3 kids well, my parents had 3 kids. So I was one of them. And but we never sat down and had dinner together really, except for special occasions and stuff. Did you guys, with a family of 8 or 7, did you guys make it a idea that you would sit down and have dinner together and talk about their day and what was going on with them and while they're throwing mashed potatoes at each other?
We did our best because there were so many activities. There's a lot of eat on the road, or having popcorn in the bleachers. But anytime we were able to all be together at once, we made kind of an event of it. But you can't really hear about everybody's whole day when there are 7 people at a table. So we did something called, and we still do this when we're all together, best and worst. To everybody tell it from ages youngest to oldest, including the parents. We have to say what was our best thing that happened to us today and what was our worst thing that happened to us today. And that way, as parents, my husband and I would kind of get, the most important high points and low points. We'd know things to watch out for, but also it would give a chance for the more quiet kids to have their voice heard, and the louder kids to, be quiet for a minute and let someone else talk. Because if you're in a large family with 3 kids, you know what I mean. There are always your extroverts and your introverts, and
well, and yeah, we were kind of it was weird in that my oldest sister was older, and then my brother was 18 months older than me, and then I was the baby. And so when you're 5, you've got 3 middle children. You got an oldest and 3 middle children, and then the youngest.
yes.
So that's interesting all by itself. But I love the way that you did that. The best part of your day and the worst part of your day, and then you get a thumbnail sketch of what's going on in each kid's life, which is really, really important. I don't know if you had 5 teenagers, were they all in sports?
Yes, and not all through. Some of them were really academic. We've got one who's getting ready to go into medical school, and he, I think, quit sports maybe after junior high. And they all kind of fizzled out eventually. And because we have 5, we're the only parents I know who, when your kids would quit a sport, we'd say, yes, now we don't have to blow around the soccer field on Saturday. We might actually do something. So we had all types of kids. And yeah, we did. At one point, they were all in sports and dance. And one of them is an Eagle Scout now, so we had Boy Scouts, and we had everything. We had a schedule. We'd get in our Suburban, and we'd make the rounds. And a couple times we'd be talking to one of the kids in the back, and I would say, where is he? Oh, he got off at there. No, he got off at the wrong stop. It's not his soccer practice. We'd have to go back and get him. And it was wild. It was really wild.
Kind of like Home Alone, where they left Kevin. It's like, Kevin!
Yes, but it was a small town, so we could whip around real quick and pick them up.
Well, and I love the fact that you had to have a Suburban, because that's the only thing. You needed something big to haul everybody around with and stuff, and that's really cool. And medical school's a big deal.
Yeah,
being Eagle Scouts a big deal.
Yeah.
So you guys did a really nice job of giving them all the opportunities to be great human beings, because I was never an Eagle Scout. I was never a lifer. I think I made it to star, but
that's good. That's good.
But that wasn't no, I wasn't. But I was a bit of an athlete, but see, in those days when parents didn't go, and I'm amazed at the number of like, if you're a soccer mom, it's like you're a soccer widow. You go to soccer every day, it seems like.
Oh, yeah, and your house is in shambles, and nobody's eaten anything of nutritional value in weeks, and you come home and it's time for bed, and you just feel terrible about the state of affairs, but everybody's doing what they want to do. So I guess you're right. It's a lot more of a rat race than it used to be.
It's amazing to me but I'm glad that you did that for your kids, and they're all, because they went through the trauma that you experienced. They also went through.
Yes, my 2 went through a whole lot of trauma, and they were much younger. Before I remarried, they were 5 and 7, I think, when I finally left the abusive marriage. But they had been going through it for several years right along with me.
And it makes it tough, especially at that age. At 7 years old, and you kind of tend to think that all that is kind of normal, what's going on, because that's all you know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All that they knew from the time they could remember was chaos. And of course, I knew that chaos wasn't supposed to be our new normal, but it was. And I think that was something that they both really had become accustomed to. But that was the whole point in leaving, was so that this wouldn't feel like home to them.
Exactly. And from what you were telling me earlier, that it didn't start out that way.
No, it started out very much the opposite. It started out with a lot more hope, and almost feeling lucky, almost feeling like I had found the person of my dreams, and I was luckier than anyone I knew.
But then
But then,
it changed.
yeah, it did. It all changed. It all changed.
Now, what do you think? Was it because he was in he was in there somewhere thinking these things, or did he actually mentally change and become a different human being?
That's sort of the question that we, myself and my two kids, I think find ourselves asking. When it's quiet at night and you're going to bed, I think we probably ask ourselves that a lot. And it's also a question that kept me tethered to the relationship for so long, because I was very much in love with the person who I had met and married, and attached to that person and hoping that that person would resurface. But ultimately, I had woken up one day with an angry stranger, and who was very focused on me. And I don't know. I don't know that. I think looking back in the very beginning, there were probably some red flags. I think I was not. I didn't. I grew up, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and I was born in the 70s and grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I don't think we had a lot of language for red flags back then.
Nope.
And so I was thinking I was going on a lot of what I thought were green flags, like someone being really good looking and intelligent. And there was a lot of love bombing, but there were signs. So I would say in the beginning, maybe there were signs of some narcissism. And I think that ultimately, had that been the only problem, then I probably just would have been in a tumultuous marriage. Who knows if I would have stayed or left? But I do think there was narcissism going on. But I think we spiraled later into um, a more deeper mental illness, some comorbid mental illnesses that were not there when I first met him and married him. And that's when the real trouble started, is with the doomsday prepping and the conspiracy theories, and then the abuse and verbal abuse and emotional abuse that came along with that.
Well, you grew up in the 70s, or born in the 70s and grew up in the 80s and stuff. And in those days, I'm glad it's changed now, but in those days, you just didn't talk about stuff like that.
No, we didn't talk about things like that. And I think most marriages, if you were looking at most marriages, what you would see is a well-crafted external persona of two people being married, and then a lot of things happening within the house that nobody knew about, and that the kids didn't talk about, and that the parents didn't talk about. I mean, I'm not saying there weren't good marriages, but the divorce rate wasn't as high then. And in my particular family, things weren't abusive, but things weren't great. They weren't loving between my parents. And as far as I can remember, I'm told that when they were younger, they were, and it wasn't something we talked about. And so I've had these signals that there's some reason to stay, even if things aren't working, even if things aren't viable or very healthy or happy. There's some reason that you just stay and stay and stay. That's what was being communicated in my Catholic home.
Oh, which by the way brings up an interesting point, for at least for me, because my dad grew up Catholic. Mm-hmm. His mom and dad were Catholic. And he married a woman, my mom, who he didn't know very well, and they were very young. And he still wanted to play. He was 21, and he wanted to go play. And of course, his parents said, "Oh, no, you can't do that. You have got a child," because they had my sister virtually right away. "You've got a child. You have to stay there, and you need to be, So they were married for 53 or 4 years before he passed away. I don't recall them ever, between themselves or to any of us kids, the term "I love you." Mm-hmm. That never happened, was not part of their vocabulary. And so the kids grew up not knowing that there were other people that maybe did that, but they were very normal for that time.
Yes, and Kevin, that was my experience too. That with the "I love you" between my parents, and it just, and I think because of that, and you tell me if this is how you felt as well. I think I was seeking out the opposite. I was seeking out, or I was very much attracted to intensity when I saw it in others.
Yeah, and we were all crying for somebody to love us and to be kind to us and stuff. And so when somebody did that, we just gravitated to really quickly to that because, oh, look at that, somebody loves me. And so
Yes.
we took that and we overlooked a ton of issues that were within that relationship that later on I could have predicted, like my high school sweetheart as an example. I was devastated when she broke up, but the fact of the matter is she could not be on time to save her life. That is one of my biggest pet peeves, is people who cannot. So we would have got divorced while I was waiting her to get ready or something. But that's how, when we're young and we don't get a lot of love and all of a sudden we want all this. Anybody that gives us a bone or says I love, even if they're not very nice, we say, oh, he's nice enough.
Yes.
Or she's nice enough. So I'm glad that you got out of it. I'm glad you told your story and wrote the book, because so many people need to hear that this isn't the end. If you're in an unhappy marriage, especially with a narcissist or somebody that's abusive, you can get out of that, and you need to get out of that. Do you agree?
Yes, yes. And that's just it. And, speaking to what you had just said, I didn't know I needed to get out of it because people like us who grew up in these quiet homes were looking for, or were interested in that intensity. It feels like the most loving thing. I mean, the levels of dopamine, if you grew up in these quiet homes, the levels of dopamine, if somebody is love bombing you, right? But that made me really susceptible to a narcissist, I think. And it also made me addicted to that cycle. So his good side was great and his bad side was terrible. Even back when we were dating, it wasn't abusive. I wouldn't characterize it as abusive just yet, but there were definitely it was dipping its toe in the water of that. And so that's something that I have told my girls, especially, and all of our kids when they started dating as teenagers, is that if a person's good side is very good and their bad side is very bad, you have to let go of both, because I was so confused by that combination. It was just, oh my gosh, I will miss this intense goodness and love that's coming from this person if I break up with them. So that made me really kind of gloss over the bad.
And that's what we do, because we're always in search of love when it wasn't available to us. Hell, I spent most of my childhood in my room, not because I wanted to, but because that's where my dad put me, because he was tired of listening to me. Apparently I talked back then too. We need to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with Emma Jean. And when Things Collapse is the name of the book. It's on Amazon and everywhere else. I want you to go look at it, and we'll be right back. At 67 years young, I never thought I'd feel this good again. But thanks to Purium's Ultimate Transformation Lifestyle, to date, I've lost 37 pounds and gained energy, confidence, and a whole new outlook on life. This isn't a diet. Purium is a complete lifestyle change, giving me all the natural, organic, nutrition-packed superfoods that fuel my body, crush my cravings, and help me burn fat naturally, without starving myself. No gimmicks, no guesswork, just a simple, proven system that works. Superfood shakes, detox support, and real results. If I can do this at 67, imagine what you can do. It's your time to feel better, look better, and live better with Purium. Let's do it now, and let's do it together. Go to www.positivetalkradio.net and click on the Transform You to get started. That's positivetalkradio.net. Transform You. And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And yes, I'm transforming into less of me. So you're not going to be able to love all of me. You're going to, anyway. So, well, we're talking with our friend Emma Jean Rowin, and we're talking about her book, and which is based upon the experiences that she had growing up. But I was thinking during the commercial, Emma Jean, that isn't it amazing the stories that we have growing up that we don't even recognize that that's a thing until it's way later down the road, and it has impacted us in ways that we can't even we can't even imagine.
Absolutely. I think your home life is it's your first sense of normalcy, even if it's not what fits normal. And as I said before, it hit me one day that, with the chaos in my home, my kids, this was going to feel like home one day. My kids had no chance if I didn't leave of understanding that other homes can be peaceful. Um, you're kind of subject to whatever your parents show you in the home.
And the interesting thing about it's like children having children. My dad and my mom were very young, and I don't know how old your mom and dad were, but when they started having kids and stuff. But it's still, you don't get it's certainly before 30, and in those days, kids people had kids younger, but they're just kids themselves.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they don't know they I know some people that are young and they have children and they don't know a thing.
Yeah, and so they're just left to figure it out, and their kids are figuring it out along with them. And that's true even if we have kids in our 30s, right? Your first kid is your experiment. So there are things that I did with my first child that with my second child I had learned not to do those things. But if you're doing that when you're young with your first child, there's even more to learn for sure. 'Cause you're still learning about life.
Exactly. And when I was the baby of the family, and when I asked my mom if my dad what my dad said when she found out when he found out that she was pregnant with me, and he said, "Oh, he wasn't too upset." So by the time 18 years came around, my dad was like, isn't it time for you to go move out now? They didn't. So, but that was normal back then,
Yes.
and stuff. But fortunately, I've never had, I've never been involved in an abusive relationship, unless I was the one getting abused. Okay, maybe I was, and which is why I don't do them anymore. But it's really hard. But I'm glad that you made it out
Thank
of
you.
there, and because you're a shining light. You've got bright, shiny eyes and a great smile, and I'm so pleased for you that you found a good man that'll take care of you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's peace is nice, and that's what I understand now that I should have been looking for all along instead of these highs and lows. There's something to be said for the constant hum of security, and understanding that there's always respectful communication around the corner and not walking on eggshells and not tiptoeing, and also being able to parent your children how you want to parent them. I wasn't able to do that in my abusive marriage because of the doomsday prepping and the conspiracy theories. My children weren't even vaccinated. By the time I left, they were getting shots at every doctor's appointment to catch up. I wasn't able to give them water with fluoride in it. I mean, it's just the amount of things. I didn't even really know what my parenting values were until I left. I had to sit down and think on my own because I was living in such a box of these are the things you can do and these are the all the things that you can't.
I really think that we need to start taking applications from people that we meet to figure out, are you a conspiracy theorist? And what do you think about QAnon and
Mhm.
all of these things? And are you going to pick up a gun and go to a pizza parlor and try and save the children in the basement when there is no basement? That's an actual true story, by the way.
Okay, all right.
it's, it's called Pizzagate, and he was a conspiracy theorist, and he thought that that the dirty rotten Democrats were um, were sacrificing children for blood in the basement of this particular pizza place. So got a gun and he went to the pizza place, and they didn't even have a basement.
Oh my gosh. And that's the thing about conspiracy. They really do believe, what whatever the conspiracy is, they believe it wholeheartedly. When my ex-husband, became an active shooter, he believed that the county road passing his rural property belonged to him, and he started shooting at everyone who passed by. And I think in his mind, it was Armageddon times, and that was, he had taken over that road, but to the people living there, there was no such thing.
I know. Well, and I can I speak to that, the Armageddon thing?
Yes.
Because, okay, picture this, everybody. The Earth, they know, is about 4.5 million years old, at least. So the Earth has been around that long. The dinosaurs left us 40,000 years ago, I think, or 60,000 years ago, something like that. The chances, we're here for like 50, 60 years or 70 years. If we're lucky, we get to 80. We're here for 80 years. The chances of Armageddon happening in our lifetime is very itty bitty, teeny weeny. And so let it go. Just
Yes.
let it go, because and you're not serving yourself, you're not serving those people around you, especially when you're looking behind every corner for a boogeyman.
Yes, and I think in my experience with my ex-husband, I think a lot of conspiracy theories serve sort of a deeper trouble within the person. In my experience with my ex-husband, it almost felt as though he wanted these things to happen.
Yes.
It almost gave him a safety if he had that knowing. And I would say, first of all, I don't think these things are going to happen, but if this is really what it's coming to, the life you're planning for us with all of this doomsday pile and all of this stuff, this stockpile of emergency gear and militia clothing and all of these guns and all of this stockpile, I don't want to live that life. That's not something for me. That's not, I mean, that's not worth saving if that's going to be our life.
In 2003, I was interviewing, or 2004, I was interviewing a gentleman who was in a bunker. And he lived in the bunker because he said, on 6 months from today, or 6 months from that week, he said, the world's going to end. And so I'm going to be in the bunker and I'm going to survive. I invited him back on the show 3 days after he said the world was going to end. And because and this was in 2004. So I wonder if he is still in that bunker, or if he has now figured out, that was kind of a stupid thing to believe.
My ex-husband still seems to be on the same trajectory. I don't speak to him anymore, but I do get emails once in a while, and you can tell that the conspiracy mindset is still there. He's still predicting the same things. He's been predicting them now for 20 years. And I actually looked up one time. There's something, I can't remember what it's actually called, anosognosia or something. It's a feature of certain mental illnesses where a healthy person, a healthy-minded person would see after several times of guessing something wrong, okay, I was wrong about that. But a person with these certain mental illnesses has this blindness to that, where they are only using sort of the confirmation bias to take in what confirms their fears and their conspiracies and their unhealthy thoughts, and everything that flies in the face of that, they throw out. Yours is actually the most stark example I can think of, someone who's saying in this many days this is going to happen, and then speaking to them later and saying to them what happened, because so many things would pass. It would be, this person is going to become president and they have intended to make that person the president, and then this is going to happen. Well, when that person would lose in the primaries, I would say, well, what now? And it would just be on to the next conspiracy. But a lot of the websites that he was reading at the time were feeding that. And it seemed as though even if you were wrong about one conspiracy, as long as they could quickly get a new theory in place, you didn't have to think about the old conspiracy that you planned for and how it was wrong.
Well, and the sad thing is about today is that this thing about getting clicks on the internet, and some people are putting stuff out there that they gotta know isn't real, isn't truthful. Yes. But they do it for the sensationalism of sucking people in to believing stupid stuff that doesn't even on the face of it have any rational It doesn't even make any rational sense.
No.
But they believe it because, as a matter of fact, my brother, to rest his soul, and he's passed on now, but at one point he said, "Can you believe that Obama was born in Kenya?" And I said, "Where did you hear that?" And he said, "It was on the internet."
Oh.
And I said, "Well, you," he said, so you can't believe all this stuff that's on the internet." And I do another show called Unscripted Politics, and I was talking with David, who's the conservative guy, and he read me something, and I said, "Where did you get that?" And he said, "Oh, I did. I don't know. I just got it off the internet." It's like, oh, come on, please, really? If you're going to believe in anything that doesn't appear to be feasible, do your research.
Yes.
Don't believe in stuff or somebody else. Well, John said that, and he saw it on the internet, or Fred said that John said that I saw it. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
And the harm that it can cause is significant. When we come back from this break, let's talk about the harm that you guys went through and what he caused, because the world is going to end, and I'm going to be the only one to survive because I'm going to be in this hole. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and Emma Jean Rowin is here. She's the author of When Things Collapse, and we ain't talking about a bridge. No, that's not in there. But I want to thank you for, number one, writing the book, because it's got, holy mackerel, you get 5 stars. Do you know that?
Oh, I'll maybe.
So you don't need to be shy about that. You are an award-winning 5-star author, and 5 stars and 4.0 on Goodreads, 36 ratings. You're a bit of a thing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to touch bases with you, because if there are people out there that are listening to this and they're in an abusive situation, do what you have to do to get out of it. And also, it affects everybody around you. It affects your children, and it can be generationally. I believe in the 7-generation rule, which is the sins of the father are then visited on the son, and then the son turns around and becomes like the father, and it can, until that cycle is broken, it can go on for a very long time and affect a lot of people. Do you believe into or subscribe to anything like that?
Yes, in therapy they actually call that your autopilot. Your autopilot is what you have seen in your home, what you have been exposed to in your formative years, and the idea of autopilot is that that's what's hardest. That's the behavior that is your default, and that's what's going to be hardest for you to overcome. So if you grew up in an abusive household, and say your father was an abuser, your autopilot will probably be to get angry with your spouse when you grow up. And in order to override that, you've got to, do the work. You've got to go to therapy. You've got to do the things to deprogram yourself. that's why cycle breaking is so hard, because if you're not trying to fight against the grain of what you saw growing up, that's what's programmed into you. And my therapist actually told me it's like the neural pathways in your head, your habits are like, if you fold a piece of paper and you fold it a certain way, the next time you go to fold it, it's going to be very easy to fold it that way. For people who are looking to change the cycle of what they grew up in, or reprogram their autopilot and reprogram their neural pathways and habits, it's like folding the paper a totally different way. It takes a long time to go against that natural grain. And that's why I think it can take many generations for that to happen.
It does. And unless you decide, and you can choose to do this, you decide to be that agent of change. Now, that what that may mean for you is, if you are the abuse, I have to mention this because I talk to a lot of women who have been abused, and either emotionally, physically, sexually, in all kinds of ways. And what I don't understand is, we don't seem to address the abuser as much as we do the victim, because we encourage the victim to get out. But the abuser needs to change his ways, one way or another, or it's going to continue on. So, especially if you are a conspiracy nut, like that, and stuff. So how did this whole experience, at the depth of it, how did it affect your family? And then when it was like you were released from prison or something, wasn't it?
It was. I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things. I wasn't allowed to wear red. We couldn't have cable. We couldn't, drink water with fluoride. We couldn't get vaccines. My children, even when my daughter was just a little girl, she had to dress modestly. My mother one time bought her these pajamas from Target, and it was just some, colorful pajama bottoms, and then a tank top. And the tank top was, covered everything. It had lace trim on it. And, he took that right away from her and said that wasn't modest. And it was starting to be where, you couldn't look up at the sky and say it was a pretty day, because he would say, oh no, those are chemtrails and the government's trying to poison us. And you had to really watch everything you said and did. I wasn't allowed to go out with my friends. My friends he had a terrible opinion of all of them. I wasn't really allowed to have any autonomy. We were both, I had become a stay-at-home mom as soon as my first child was born. And so he then brought his business home. And so we were home together all day long, just living under this dark cloud with him. And he was very volatile, very angry, constantly screaming at me about little things. If my son was little and he tripped on his pajamas one time on the tile, slid, and he was screaming, what kind of a terrible mother, his pajama pants are too long. Or there's an incident in the book that I recall as the first time there was physical abuse, when he said, our son was crying because he wanted juice, and he went into the refrigerator and said, there's no orange juice, and screaming just profanities at me and what a terrible mother I was because I had forgotten the juice. And I went in and, moved something to the side, and there was the juice. You never knew what was going to be the next trigger. I really tried to stay on the upper levels away from him, just based on his moods. He was very stormy, and I was under attack verbally all the time. And the worst part of being under attack verbally is when it would happen in front of the kids. It would feel like, oh my God, I wish I could undo that. I wish I could, put that toothpaste back in the tube, but you can't, right? Just what their little ears had heard. And I think on some level, knowing how that was going to affect them, until the day that I actually had the epiphany, and my children basically told me how it was affecting them. So we were under a lot of stress, a lot of tiptoeing.
What I want everybody to recognize is that this book can help you in a myriad of ways when things collapse. And it's a great story. I don't want to go too much into that story, because I want people to buy the book.
Sure.
Because even if you buy it and it's on your coffee table and you have friends over, somebody's going to need to read that book because that story is going to resonate with them, and they can. And I think the biggest thing that I want everybody to get out of this conversation that we're having today is that you survived, you've
Yes.
overcome, and you're now a happy, well-adjusted female that has a a good guy that is with you, and you can see it in your face, in your smile, which is really cool.
I have a great life. My life is great circumstantially, but it took me a long time to rebuild that. And that's something that I want women to understand. You don't leave and it's all rainbows. When I left, the only thing I was sure of, the only thing that had changed in me of my programming was I had had a harsh realization that for my kids, I needed to leave and show them something different, or they were going to grow up and this would feel like home. Um, I was not sold on anything else about the situation. I didn't believe that I would ever find healthy love. I didn't believe that I would ever be financially stable again. I didn't believe I'd ever live in a home that I liked or have a schedule that I liked. Now that I had to go back to work and deal with all these big changes at once. You might have to walk into a destitute situation to get yourself out of it, but you should always know and understand that that is still what's best for your children, and you can rebuild. It becomes easier exponentially every day to rebuild when you don't have somebody giving you bad messages about yourself, chipping away at your self-confidence, and just abusing you. Through that, I was able to finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it was a pinhole at that time. But every day got, I won't say every day got better. Those circumstances were hard economically. He punished me when I left, and he had a lot of money and I did not. And he punished me, and he tried to punish the kids through that to drive me back to him. But I knew all you have to do is just know that it's the right thing to do for you or for your kids. And if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your kids, because my kids are thriving. And when my daughter started dating, she was nothing like me. She was not lining them up and knocking them down. And I think some women say, oh, my daughter's dating someone new. I hope he continues to like her and it doesn't break her heart. Over here we were like, oh no, I hope she doesn't just ruin this poor kid's life. I know his mother, she is a tough cookie, and it's not something I had to speak to her about. It's something that was burned into her when she saw me leave a bad situation. I have seen her leave long-term boyfriends who who she very much loved, because they're starting to be grumpy, and they're starting to have these issues, and I'm a happy person and it's changing me. And I can't tell you what, I mean, that was music to my ears, because I didn't have to sit her down and tell her that over and over as a teenager. She learned it. I changed her autopilot to be different than mine.
That's brilliant, and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because you strike me as being a really engaged, positive parent.
Thank you. I try. I've got my flaws. I've got my kid. You could bring the kids on sometime. You can have a second episode, talk to my kids, and my 21-year-old daughter will tell you all the things, all my flaws. But I do think I'm very honed in and focused, because especially of what we went through.
Well, and absolutely, and your kids appreciate what you did. Now, did you leave primarily because were your children your motivation, or was it a combination of your children and you that you decided that there was a point in time when enough was enough and you were going to get out?
It was my children, all in the same day. My son told me in the morning. He saw me upstairs rocking back and forth. I had been screamed at, or something awful had happened downstairs, and he was little and he was playing with his toys near me, and I didn't realize I had formed a habit of rocking in this chair and crying while he played. And he came up to me and with a tissue and said, "Mommy, why do you cry all the time in your sad chair? Is it because my daddy always yells at you?" And that was my first epiphany. Okay, he sees that. And then later that day, my daughter and I were in the car, and he had been screaming at me on the phone. And when we pulled in, she said, "When I go in, Mommy, I have an idea. I'll act really, really cute so that he will be distracted and he'll be nice to you." And it was just like a bomb for me. Went off, this truth bomb of, okay, you're teaching her to tiptoe around him, and one day this is going to feel like home when a man treats her this way. And not only will she put up with it, but she will probably gravitate towards someone like that. So when I left, I could have endured a lot more. I think I'm a pretty strong person. I think for me, I just was sold on this being the wrong thing for my children.
I gotta tell you, I can't imagine what it would be like. I'm a pretty positive fella. I don't know if you've gathered that, but
I have.
but I don't know what it would be like to yell at somebody all the time. I just, that doesn't even strike me as being remotely fun in any way, shape, or form. It's like, why would you do that? So when we come back from this break, and this is our last break, it's just 30 seconds. So behave, everybody, and we will be right back. More with Emma Jean Rowin and When Things Collapse. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, because you're a veteran. You've been through it, and there are people that are about to or need to that we can help. So we're going to be right back. Don't anybody go anywhere.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And I was just thinking, I was playing that commercial, and that he was so nervous, and he asked her out on a date, and she said, "Okay, I'll go on a date." And then he goes on the date, and he yells at her the entire time. That just doesn't make any sense to me, why that's even a thing, why somebody would do that. Because especially somebody that you love, and you had a couple of kids together, and then so I hope that he gets the help that he needs, because he needs help.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But and this is really common in certain mental illnesses, the very thing he needs help for, the paranoia, is the thing that keeps him from sitting in a counselor's office. And that was sort of the ultimatum when I left. So you'll get this help, or I will call an attorney. And he just couldn't do it. He believed he would be put on a list, a government list, and eventually it would land him in an internment camp. I can't reason against that.
Well, in his case, he deserved to be in an internment camp until he cleaned up his act. But that's not even a thing. At least it wasn't. It may be now, but it wasn't. It didn't used to be a thing. But that is so. It is so sad, because you're right. The paranoia feeds into everything that he is feeding about himself. So it's a never-ending. It's like a circular firing squad.
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a really good analogy for it.
Because he just sits there, and he complains, and then he I can't go there, because then I'm going to get put on the list, and then they're going to do this, and then I don't know how people live that way. I really don't. And if you, by the way, if you are a man listening to this, and there are men that do listen to this, thank you very much, guys. If you're listening to this and you find yourself yelling at the person that you live with and you love more than you kiss them and hug them and tell them that you love them, go get help, please, because you're affecting everybody around you and your children, and it's going to affect their lives. Please get the help that you need. And 988 is a great number. It's a crisis hotline. And because, quite frankly, you might not realize it, and I'll ask Emma here in a moment, but you are actually in crisis. You may not realize it because you're in that circular firing squad, but you are in crisis. Go get the help you need, because people don't deserve what you're giving them if you are yelling at them all the time or slapping people around because you can, and stuff. So was that okay to say?
Yeah, I think that's really okay to say. And I think that what a lot of men who are verbally abusive probably could connect with is, because it is such a cycle that is passed down. They may have had a father, or in the case of my ex-husband, an uncle who screamed at them that way, a caretaker who screamed at them that way. If you're a man who finds yourself yelling at your family, think back to how you felt when you were a child and someone did that to you or around you. And do you want your son to grow up and do that to his wife? It's all a cycle, and it's all about the choices you make.
And you can make better choices, but the fact is that you have to choose to make those choices in a positive way.
Yes.
And hopefully, if you're listening to this show and you've heard all of the people that we've had on that are all really positive people, you're getting the idea that maybe there's a better way to be, a better way to live, and pursue it. Don't wait. Do it now. Pick up the phone and call somebody if that's you. And on this same token, if that somebody is treating you badly and is yelling at you all the time, and it's affecting your kids and all the people around you, quietly, safely find a way to get out of that situation.
Yes.
And do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And tell your friends, start to tell, if you're not sure because, if you've been living in that environment, you may not know how abnormal that is. I didn't know how abnormal it was when I first started whispering it to my friends. This is what he said to me. Or when I told my mother, the look on their faces gave me the insight I needed to know this is not normal. This is something that's become normalized to me, but it's not what's happening in behind closed doors in other people's marriages. Tell on yourself, tell on your spouse, tell your most trusted loved ones, and see what they think about it.
That's really good advice. That's really good advice. And a lot of people don't want to do that because they are ashamed to do that.
Yeah. And it's a courtesy that we give to our spouse, right? I mean, everybody has flaws, and everybody shows their worst flaws probably in their home. So I have a healthy spouse who 99% of the time I have positive interactions with. When his flaws come out, and they're nothing like, anything that looks like abuse, I don't run and tell my girlfriend and my mother right away. That's a courtesy, right? So that they can understand, so that they can, still look them in the eye and be nice and not have to know all of the dirt, right? But the problem with that is it's a slippery slope, because if your husband becomes abusive, it usually happens little by little. You just start to do the same thing, where you still pay them that courtesy, even though their behavior is beyond what deserves the courtesy of silence.
So if your person that you're living with is telling all of your friends that you're horrible, if they monitor your cell phone, if they don't let you leave the house without them, there's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's not good for you. And so there is help that you can get. Do a little research, save a little bit, and do some stuff. I found out that my ex-wife was shaving money off the account before she left, because she wanted to get to anyway. But in any event, and I'm not saying that it's just men that are abusive either. It can be both. It can be either. So I encourage everybody to tell each other, be kind to each other, and say I love you more. And I think that'll help somewhat. But unless you believe that the earth is coming to an end day after tomorrow, and that you need to dig a hole and put everybody in, or something, I don't know, some conspiracy theory kind of thing. But I want to thank you, Emma, for being here. Emma Jean has been our guest, and when things collapse, it's really an important work, because I've met so many people that have had dysfunctional relationships and have suffered abuse. I think, and I quoted this statistic to somebody recently, like maybe 98, 99%. I have yet to have somebody come on the show and say, oh no, my life was damn near perfect. My mom and dad were like Mary Poppins, practically perfect in every way. And I've lived my dream life and everybody's been great to me. And I've never heard that. Not once.
No. Not from anybody who's telling themselves the truth, right? We've all got stuff. We've all got stuff to work through.
We do, and to be kind to one another, and by the way, I was practically a perfect husband. I just want you to know that.
I had guessed that.
I had my flaws. One of my flaws was I quit my corporate job so that I could do the radio show.
Well,
and
living
I didn't.
Your dream.
I was living my dream, and then I'm sticking to that. And sadly, it wasn't her dream, and so. She didn't want to live that. And so, but you know what? Just like you, years later, I'm so fortunate that happened. And I'm so glad that you're living a good life with a good man. And you've got 5 beautiful kids that are now young adults, and they're probably all in voting age, aren't they?
They are.
Well, I hope they vote for good people.
I hope they vote for good people and they start to win.
That's exactly true. And again, we're talking with Emma Jean Rowin, and I would love for you to, we've got just a few minutes left. I would love you to take a couple of moments and tell our audience anything that you would like them to know that you feel is important.
First, I want to tell women or anybody who's going through abuse something that I didn't know or something that I didn't have access to is that the domestic abuse hotline, you can actually text that hotline now instead of having to call. I think for some people that makes it easier. And I think that certainly was something I could have used as a resource back in my time. And also just whatever you're going through, believe in your ability to pull yourself out of it. Women especially can do anything, especially if we are mothers. We believe we have no choice but to save our children. It's in our biology. And so go with that. Have faith in yourself. If I can do it, and I was a sad woman in her robe trying to find a job and get past it, if I can do it, any of you can.
And that is encouraging right there. And the fact of the matter is you need to. Somebody needs to break the 7-generation cycle. And it could be you. Why not you? I think would be a great moment in time. It should be, you should take care of that because so many people rely on you and stuff. And I think your advice to start talking to your girlfriends and the people around you and say, he's hanging from the chandelier upside down like 3 times. Is that normal? Does your husband do that? That might be good. Or he's yelling at me because I left the toilet seat down. Is that normal?
Yeah. And don't try and talk them out of it. Just wait and look at their reaction on their faces. That's what you need to see,
And they're like, oh, poor girl. Then they'll work to help get you out of the situation as well. So.
Absolutely.
And the name of the book is When Things Collapse. By the way, do you have another book in you?
I don't know. I guess we'll have to see if writing finds me. It just kind of found me this time. It kind of just poured from me, and we'll see. I'm going to write on a happier subject. Although I tell my current husband when he won't close the coat closet or he leaves his shoes out, I'm like, I'm going to put that in When Things Collapse too. It's a good little joke we've got going.
Oh, that's it. That's good. So he actually puts his shoes away?
Well, that's the idea. He doesn't, but he's actually extremely helpful. But when there are little, those little things that drive you crazy with the people you're living with, and so that's my joke to him. Oh well, when I write When Things Collapse too, I'm going to write about this shoe problem.
Yeah, I learned so much from this show. Like somebody told me one time that was on the show, and she said, "Yeah, I get up every day and I make my bed." And I said, "You do?"
I don't.
I don't either.
It's a great day when I do, though. It's a great day then.
And Emma Jean Rowin, get the book When Things collapse. Amazon and any bookseller, you can get it there. Thank you, Emma Jean. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
You're going to have to come back.
I will.
Perfect. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin